Hello YouTube and welcome to Dumpster Linux Part 5. Now we were going to be looking at translating the Unity interface into the Ubuntu interface, but one of the statements that I made about not going for laptops out of the dumpster, and some other people floated some experience that I thought I'd better put a video together about the laptops and getting that out of the way. Now, the purchase of a laptop over a desktop, even for a brand new purchase, is something which should trigger a degree of thought. Desktops themselves, even though the cases change, the innards are pretty consistent. The electronics within them are typically mass manufactured, so the costs come down. When you look at laptops, however, and netbooks, powerbooks, ultrabooks and all the rest of it, they're typically driven by fashion. So people want thinner devices, lighter devices, all the rest of that jazz. So the designs of them change, and consequently that has a knock-on effect for the electronics that are within them. So typically they don't get the same value for money for the parts. So my own rule of thumb is, if you want a laptop that's going to give the same performance as a desktop, you're looking at least twice the price. And this is the innards of one laptop, believe it or not, and as you can see, it's quite a bit scrunched in there. And this isn't actually one of the most scrunched designs I've ever seen. But you know, laptops don't seem to perform the same and hold the same performance as a desktop. Desktops, you can upgrade them more easily. With laptops, you're restricted to maybe the memory, the hard drive. That's about it. With a desktop, you should already know that you've got the ability to add in a new graphics card if you wish. You can't do that easily with a laptop. And also, because some of these design parts cost more. Say your DVD rewriter goes wrong in a desktop, what's it going to cost you? 15–20 pounds. One that is specifically designed for a limited range of laptops, it's going to cost you a lot more to replace that. So that's the kind of thing that you've got to think about. And they're designed basically to go outside the business. The consequence is that most businesses will actually tie down laptops in ways that they wouldn't tie down a desktop. And let's face it, a desktop is relatively straightforward. You just open the lid, pop the battery, cross the connections, and away you go. It's reset. With a laptop, it's a lot more it's a lot more difficult, because it's quite a different beast. Now, this is the battery. You can see this yellow blob here. That's the battery in there. And from it you can see a red lead that leads into a socket there. So if you were to take this battery out, you just pull that socket, and then you'd sort of put a piece of metal across there to short it out. But with a laptop, that's not the end of the story. To get at this, it takes time. You've got to take all the screws out, and you've got to remember which ones go where in order to stand any chance of putting a laptop back together with the same sort of semblance of presentation that it was in when you took it apart in the first place. It's not the easiest thing, and that's why they do one of the next things I'm going to tell you about. This is one of the specialist tools that we have for taking apart laptops, because once you've got all the screws out, they can still have plastic retaining clips, and you've got to pop those clips. And this is plastic, so it doesn't do the same damage as a thinner blade screwdriver might. But even then, we're not guaranteed to not damage the laptop as you take it apart. And it's because it's so difficult to get at these batteries that they designed the settings in a different way. Rather than using volatile memory storage, they use non-volatile memory storage for the CMOS settings, because getting at this battery can be so difficult. What am I talking about? Well, imagine your memory stick. You can put files on here, and the files will stay on there, even though there's no power being delivered being delivered to the memory stick. It's non-volatile. And that's what they do with the settings in here. So even pulling the battery and shorting the contacts might not do anything. And you still might be in the same trouble. So how do you get around it then? Well, typically you've got to look up and you've got to identify and look up the schematic, if you can find it, of the particular motherboard that's in this particular machine. What you're then looking for is a jumper. Now, a jumper, yeah, it's a woolly thing you pull over your head, but you'll find that somewhere on the motherboard there can be two pieces of metal sticking up. And a jumper is another piece of metal, typically contained in a little bit of black plastic, that you put over the top of those two, and that makes an electrical contact. If you then switch on the computer with that jumper in place, as part of the computer's startup, it looks at that and says, oh, there's a circuit there. That must mean an engineer is asking me to reset the CMOS, the BIOS settings. So it will voluntarily commit CMOS, BIOS Harikiri. Then once it's done it, you shut it off, remove the jumper, start it up, and it should be okay. Sometimes you don't even get the courtesy of those two pieces of metal sticking up. Sometimes all you get is two little blobs of solder on the motherboard, and you've got to join them somehow. And that's when you do something like this. Tweezers with very pointed ends. So you get one point on each of the little solder blobs, and start the, yeah, you're holding it there while you start the laptop up, and then it sees, oh, there's a contact. They want me to reset, and then it will reset itself. Now, I've got to sound a warning here, in that you never know what voltages are running around inside a laptop when you power it up, and having it open to this kind of degree, indeed, to get at the motherboard properly, I'd have to take this layer off as well. You never know what voltages are floating around, and you've got to be very careful, in particular with the voltage inverter that feeds the backlight to the LED display. You've got to be very careful. You never know what's running around where, and also what potential damage you could cause. So, it's not easy. I mean, taking one of these apart in a fashion when you can put it back together again takes time. You've got to... It's very easy to see how resetting one of these could get very hairy, very fast, and sometimes be a complete waste of time even when you've done it, because you never even know if there's a fault on the system. And if there is a fault on the system, getting hold of the specific part for that laptop could be very expensive, very difficult. So it can go beyond that. We haven't finished yet. Hard disks. Some of the hard disks themselves can actually contain their own password, and that is, so you can take the hard drive out of one machine, put it in another, and it will still ask you for the same password. And that is another piece of hardware encoding that's going on. Fortunately, one of the more common things is that companies are utilizing full disk encryption. And that means that there's software that's encrypting all the code on the hard drive. That is relatively easy to get around, because all you've got to do is install another operating system on top of it. It's a dumpster machine. You don't actually care about the data, you actually care about getting the machine working again. And for that, put a new operating system on, and that should take care of it. That is assuming that you can get in the BIOS to allow yourself the permission to boot from a CD or a USB stick to install the new operating system on there. It gets very messy very fast. There are a few other bits and pieces with BIOS with regards software and backdoors. Some manufacturers do have backdoors for their BIOS, and it doesn't matter what the company have said. There will be a backdoor BIOS password which will work. Not all manufacturers do that. Some manufacturers have, there are other pieces of software. As long as you can get the laptop to load the software, then the software can do the job for you. but it's all hit and miss. There is no industry standard way of recovering a machine where the BIOS password is not known. And if the system is set to boot only from the hard disk and you can't get in the BIOS to change that, then how are you going to get some of this software on there in the first place? You're on an uphill battle. Laptops from the dumpster can be a completely unknown quantity, and it could cause you a lot more pain. So, you know, if you do decide to take a risk, run a chance, sometimes you could get lucky. But if you don't, well, what the heck? It's an exercise of spending some time with a screwdriver. So I'll put what links I can in the hoo-ha bar. If anybody has any other links to suggest, please let me have them and I will add them to what I put in the hoo-ha bar. But in general, it's going to be get whatever you can out of whatever search engine will give you the results you need. You just gotta hope that the BIOS isn't locked out. If the BIOS is locked out, good luck, basically. That's all I can say. So, for now, the next video, well, should I say that the next video will be Unity to Ubuntu? Or will something else creep in the way? I'll see you in part 6 of Dumpster Linux, where I don't know what I'll be talking about. See you in the next video. Bye.